What's up, everybody? Thralls Melly here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another collection update for you, and this will round out the Colorado trip and also get into the stuff that arrived almost as soon as I got back from Colorado. Now, I think I only have one more band on this collection update that actually played at the Denver Deathfest. Other than that, this is just stuff that I picked up, and there's some fun non-metal surprises in this one as well, and I think one that I alluded to in a previous collection update. But needless to say, we have a large stack here once again, so we're just going to get right down to it. All right, up first we have this massive split between Tchornobog and Abyssal. Now, this came out last year and I kind of just missed it. I actually am a fan of Abyssal. I've seen them live. They played at MDF in 2019. It was an absolutely amazing and haunting performance. And as for Tchornobog, I've only just heard of that band within the last couple of years, and this is actually my first sampling of their work. And both of these bands I would describe as blackened death metal, very dissonant, little bits of like death doom in there too. This is just sprawling, dark, evil sounding music. And in terms of a sampler size, well, there are only 2 tracks in here, but each track is over 20 minutes long. So I'm just gonna go over them in order of how they appear, which the first track is by Tchornobog. It is called The Vomiting Choir, and man, like right away, the atmosphere is just very unsettling, very dark, dissonant. There are layered kind of growls and moans and groans and very distant guitars. But the interesting thing about this song is as it goes on, it gets maybe like a little bit more catchy, a little bit more, I don't know, inviting. Like, it's initially just very dark and dismal, and from the rip, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be fucking just absolutely disturbing as hell. And it kind of was. But as it went on, I don't know if my ears just got used to it, but it started to really appeal, and I think the melodies became more catchy and tuneful, albeit still absolutely evil as fuck. In fact, I'd say around the 12-minute mark was where it really started to shift on that song to what I would call more melodic territory, albeit like not the most pleasant of melodies, but still like very tuneful. Before that, very dissonant, very atonal. Again, the vocals in here are very layered and just disturbing, but I really ended up digging this. And both of these songs are really good at doing long, drawn-out sections and kind of adding layers in terms of melodies and, you know, like some really cool atmospheric tremolo riffs. And both of them excel. Abyssal's track, Antechamber of the Wakeless Mind, is maybe like a little bit more brutal. The production is a little bit different. I think the guitars feel a little bit thinner in there. It's not as like caustic and layered and dense and kind of claustrophobic as Tchornobog's side, but it's still very evil. There's more technical parts on there, like kind of similar to Incantation, which Incantation's kind of comparable in terms of both of the bands, albeit they kind of take those big atmospheric moments Incantation does and kind of just draw it out a lot and make it sound more evil. Abyssal's side, I would say, definitely has a little bit more death doom to it, and there's some really solid, just flat out death metal chugging rhythms on there, and some awesome blackened tremolos that add a lot of atmosphere. Both of these songs are really good, and when I initially got this, I was not aware that both songs were so damn long. But honestly, really didn't hurt it at all. In fact, I dig this. Even the weird, creepy cover with the flying eyeball and the mountain with a tongue in it. I have no idea what the hell is going on in here, but it's creepy, it's unsettling, and it kind of matches what's going on the album. So yeah, if you have never checked out either one of these bands, I've only just listened to that one Tchornobog song, but I really dug it. And as for Abyssal, I like pretty much everything they've put out. Awesome fucking band, but yeah, check this split out. It is nightmarish, but really fucking good. This is Hell. This is the second album from this Long Island hardcore act. Been kind of quiet here, I believe, since like 2016, but I've been a fan of them since their debut album, Sundowning, and this was one that I was missing, and in a way, kind of a transitional album. The album that followed this one, Black Mass, was notably more of a crossover thrash album. Like, it definitely still had its hardcore moments, but the riffs and even the production overall definitely had way more of a crossover vibe. And this is kind of like that halfway part. There are still the very punky hardcore songs. Like, this really doesn't dabble too much into metallic hardcore outside of a few breakdowns on here. This is more of that like sick of it all agnostic front style of hardcore, like very straightforward, very punk-driven, and very emotional, too. The songs are explosive, they are violent. The vocals on here are larynx-shredding screams that sound exhausted and desperate as they do angry and just fucking fed up with everything around them. But as I said, this is a little bit of a transitional album. Like, you do get some crossover thrash moments on Reckless and Without Closure for sure. But it's really not the predominant thing. It's more or less just a teased element on here. And this one is a little bit more melodic than the debut. Like, there are big hooky melodies on here that kind of match up with like the more desperate vocals and, you know, kind of turning the angst into like more of a pleading sound in terms of like, listen to me, I'm going through some shit. But even in those catchy moments, it doesn't lose like an ounce of bite. Like, this is still just, you know, ferocious, in-your-face hardcore. The songs are generally very short, very, you know, in-your-face, to the point, and they get on to the next beat down. Now, while this is very fast-paced and again, like more like kind of a punk hardcore sound, you do get some more metallic breakdowns on In Shambles, Remnants, and You Are the Antithesis. And actually one of the last tracks, Memoirs, actually has some really solid kind of groovy, riffy moments to kind of break up the D-beat fury that is all over here. The closer is probably the most different track on here, Last Day's Campaign. It is probably the most melodic track. It's a little bit more somber and reflective, and it ends with Morse code going on in the background. At least that's what it sounded like to me, and it might actually be a distress signal, which is, you know, kind of clever. I mean, it's kind of a different way of conveying distress in a way, and I thought it was, you know, kind of interesting in terms of like closing the album. But yeah, overall this was really solid. I kind of like the crossover thrash stuff a little bit more. Black Mass is a really underrated album in my opinion. But definitely check this one out if you just like straight up fucking hardcore, again, like very much like Sick of It All and stuff of that ilk. Definitely check this out. Tribulation Hamartia. At least I think that's how you say that. Anyway, this is the 6th EP from this Swedish, God, it's kind of hard to describe these guys. Like blackened death metal slash occult rock slash doom metal. I don't know. This band pretty much sounds like what Ghost looks like, at least in the early years. Like, this was the sound that you kind of expected. It's very gloomy, but very catchy. Lots of like classic heavy metal licks, but with like a nice heavier side, especially in terms of the vocals. They stay raspy and evil sounding. And I have been a fan of this band since their debut, which is vastly different than anything they're doing now, but still really good. But I like their goth rock infused blackened death doom, goth rock, whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. It's just awesome. It's riffy and it's catchy, and I absolutely love it. And I've been anxiously awaiting this EP for a while. I tried getting it when I was down in Florida. No place fucking had it. Luckily in Colorado they had it, and I swiped it right up because every song that I heard on here was absolutely awesome. I heard Access Monday first. That song is infectious as hell. I love those crawling guitar harmonies that are on that song, and man, just how that riff caps off in the verses, it's just so damn catchy. But one of my main selling points on this, and it goes back to like early music fandom, is their cover of Vengeance the Pact, which is one of my favorite Blue Oyster Cult songs off of Fire of Unknown Origin. That might be my favorite track on that album, which that actually might be my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album. And they nail it. The harsh vocals still stay in there, but they bring in the clean vocals for the absolutely awesome chorus. I love how that song tied into heavy metal, but they just didn't use it. That was supposed to be the whole scene where the, you know, fucking barbarians are raiding the town before they summon the warrior chick and her pterodactyl. And if you don't remember that scene specifically, it's the one where Black Sabbath's Mob Rules is playing. They chose that song, which is fucking awesome. Like, that's a great fucking riff, but this one was actually written to fit that particular fucking moment. Actually, that whole album was kind of written to fit that entire movie, but they only used Veteran of the Psychic Wars, which was fantastic. Anyway, back to this. I'm gushing about Blue Oyster Cult too much. Fantastic EP. They capture every ounce of gloomy, melodic hookiness that they are known for here lately. Their last, God, 2 albums at least I would say are some of their best work, though I honestly like all of their albums, but those last 2 have been personal favorites. I fucking jam Hour of the Wolf all the time. That is one of the catchiest songs they've ever written, but I jam this one now a lot, and honestly every track on here, especially Hemoclism, sure, that song is dark, it's a little bit longer, a little bit more brooding, maybe a little bit heavier, but yeah, everything on here is fantastic. If you love Tribulation, at least what they're doing now, like I know there's a bit of a division in the fans just because some have heard that original death metal album they put out first, which is fucking awesome. But their shift in sound probably divided their fan base just a little bit. I don't know. I like it all. I think they excel at both styles, even though I don't think they're going to do the death metal stuff again for a while. I don't know. They might, but I doubt it. But yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, if you're a fan of like classic heavy metal, a little bit of black metal, maybe just a touch of death metal, not really that much of it there anymore, but this is just fantastic songwriting, so yeah, just check it out. Urgehal Ikonoklast. I don't know if I'm saying the band's name right, which is fucked up because I've been a fan of this band for a while. Anyway, this is the 6th album from this Norwegian black metal act. In my opinion, I see these guys as very underrated / overlooked. All the stuff that I picked up by them has been fantastic, and I started with Through Thick Fog Till Death, and I absolutely love that album and its gloriously campy album cover. Now this is the last full length with their bassist / guitarist / vocalist / I believe principal songwriter at the time, Tronder Nefes. Sadly, he passed in 2012, and since I think they've only put out one album, which was also really good, but definitely was missing something, and pretty obvious what it was missing. But this album is fantastic, start to finish. This is the kind of black metal I like. It's very riffy, it's very evil, but it's also got great melodic hooks throughout. I think the songwriting here is fantastic. There's icy cold tremolos everywhere, lots of blast beats. This kind of moves at the pace of a Marduk or Shooter album. Like, it's really going most of the time, but when it breaks it down, man, the riffs come out to fucking play, and there's a lot of thrash on here. The vocals are excellent. I love the raspiness and sort of rawness of all the screams. I think the drum work's fantastic, albeit maybe a little bit muddy on this one. But to me, the thing that really drives this album are the riffs. The riffs on here are absolutely fantastic, especially on songs like Cut Their Tongue, Shut Their Prayer, The Necessity of Total Genocide, and Astral Projection to Rabid Hell. Pretty fun song titles. Astral Projection actually has a section, I think it's before a breakdown or during a breakdown, where the frontman says, I said, ugh, just to let you know that he said that actual part, and kind of gives a nice Tom G. Warrior, ugh, because those are fun to do in black metal. I think that's probably the only reason to do it. But Tom still does it probably the best. You get a fun punky two-step on, oh god, this one's in Norwegian. Neven Rider Dipt I Not. Maybe not at all. Maybe I royally just fucked that one up. That is distinctly possible. And there are a lot of leads on here, which is not necessarily like the biggest black metal thing, but there are shreddy, very melodic leads on almost every track on here, which I think is kind of refreshing because it's just another dose of melody to balance out all of the flat out fucking hatred that's on here. This is an awesome album. I have liked everything I've heard from this band so far, and I think I'm only missing a couple of albums by them. So yeah, I'm gonna continue hunting down the rest of their discography because I like everything I've heard. But yeah, if you like Marduk, Immortal, Shooter, I would say those are very comparable. Definitely check this band out. Legit, everything that I have picked up by them has been amazing. So you could definitely start here, but I would recommend Through Thick Fog Till Death. That one's still probably my favorite. That's the one that got me into them. But yeah, everything I've heard is fucking awesome by this band. So yeah, check them out. Winter Into Darkness. This is the lone full length from this New York Death Doom act. Arguably one of the pioneers of Death Doom as a whole. I've heard this one brought up in many conversations as to whether or not this was like the first true Death Doom album. I suppose it's debatable. This came out in 1990, and this is, I believe, an original on Nuclear Blast, unless there was one before that that I don't know, but this is at least a very early print of it, and granted I already have the reissue of this, I wanted an earlier print just because this album's kind of legendary. Now, I am going to keep this one relatively short because I do want to do a full-on retro review of this album at some point because it's kind of an important album, at least in terms of like the evolution of death metal or doom metal in terms of like merging the two. And it's fantastic. It is slow, it is swampy, there are big instrumental sections, the vocals are Not quite what you expected of Death Doom now, because most of the time in Death Doom, like, you hear the lowest of growls, like, you know, Hooded Menace and such, but the vocals in here were a little bit more along the lines of, like, David Vincent. But this is slow, lumbering, the guitars are thick, the bass is possibly thicker, I don't know, they kind of ooze into one another to form a glob of sound that just drips into your eardrums. God, that's a nasty description there. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and again, I definitely want to do this as a retro review at some point, probably more towards the end of this year into next year, just because the release schedule is fucking huge. But yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic album. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have bought 2 fucking copies of it. But yeah, finding an OG one, or at least a close to original print. I don't know if there was another version of this that came out first, but I mean, it does have the very old Nuclear Blast logo on it. So this is pretty damn old. But yeah, if you've never checked this out, strongly recommend it. This is like kind of a legendary Death Doom release for good reason. And yeah, I want to say the rest of my thoughts for a retro review in the future, but I will just say check it out because it's absolutely awesome. Zao, the Splinter, Shards, The Birth of Separation. This is the second album from this, well, now Pennsylvania, back then West Virginia metalcore act, a very notable Christian metalcore act that I've been listening to since I discovered Solid State Records fucking forever ago. Now this is back when Sean Jones fronted the band. This was actually the last one with them. Dan Wadent, I think that's how you say his last name, took over, and he's been the main guy ever since. In fact, I think he's the only member that's still left in the band that kind of hails back this far. Now when Dan entered the band, their sound got a little bit more broad and a little bit more atmospheric. This is more straight ahead, hardcore slash metalcore. Like, you still have a lot of, you know, kind of that classic Victory Record sound, but some more twisted stuff, like kind of like Earth Crisis, but also like little bits of like Botch and Converge sort of swirled together. Lots of squawky alarm clock riffs and, you know, like nasty hardcore grooves. The vocals are a little bit more of just a straightforward growl. Like, there's not really much to them, but they do kind of drive the songs, as well as like the transitions into, like, you know, faster thrashy sections, and of course big metallic hardcore breakdowns. Now this album was kind of familiar already because I had a couple of tracks from both Solid State samplers back in the 90s, as well as the Tooth and Nail ones, which those are called Songs from the Penalty Box. I don't know why they always had like a hockey theme with those. I don't know, whatever. But the song Exchange, I know I heard on one or the other in terms of like whether it was Solid State or Tooth and Nail. And I really dig that song. Exchange, I think, is one of my favorites on here just because it's got a nice thrashy edge to it. And you get a little bit of that thrashy edge on In Loving Kindness and a bit on Repress. Repress actually has some almost more death metal tremolos that pop up on there, giving it a more dark and sinister sound, which I have to say, darkness is kind of interesting for a Christian metal band, albeit the Bible's pretty fucking dark book. But I mean, they really make sure to let you know they're Christian, especially on In Loving Kindness. I believe that's the one where there's an isolated scream, praise Jesus, just in case you didn't know that they were Christian. All in all though, I do really like this album. I think it's pretty solid. I think their later albums definitely kind of branched out their sound a little bit more and got more experimental and more dynamic. This is still really solid, and you can definitely hear them grow from their first album, which I have jammed that one, and it is pretty solid as well. But honestly, I do prefer their more recent stuff. I think the albums they've put out here more recently have been some of their best work. But I would say most of Zao is pretty damn awesome. So yeah, give this one a whirl, especially if you like, again, early metalcore, like that late 90s, more visceral sound. This is definitely that, albeit with a heaping dose of Jesus. To each their own there, but yeah, regardless, check it out. All right, we have another pair here from Yes. We have their fourth album, Fragile, and their sixth album, Relayer. And both are really different. I did hint that there was more Yes to come, and I was really excited to go over these because, well, they're both awesome albums, but namely Fragile was the one that I was excited about because this is probably the earliest musical memory I have of Yes, because my mom played this album a lot. And yeah, Roundabout, absolutely fucking fantastic song, but I love this whole album. There are some interesting interludes here and there, but I think that are pretty cool and definitely contribute to the album, but it's the main songs on here. Roundabout, South Side of the Sky, and, oh man, Heart of the Sunrise. Heart of the Sunrise is maybe like a top 5 Yes song for me. The long instrumental section that opens it up is some of the best in terms of like 70s prog out there. Like, I just absolutely fucking love that song. Now, this was the first one they had with Rick Wakeman, who I see as a legendary keyboardist, and his contributions are great. I love the spacey synths all over here. But Steve Howe really shows off on here, especially on Mood for a Day. I love the guitar work on there. For me, with the Yes album and this album, like, this is where Yes really started to come in their own and just kind of forge ahead in this prog rock sound, and it became so lavish. Like, the songs were inventive, the transitions were wild, the layers were intense. I loved all the vocal harmonies. But when it came down to still generating like good hooks, like good sing-alongs, these guys were still just absolutely excellent at that. I absolutely love Bill Bruford's drum work in here too. It's absolutely fantastic. This is just a marvelous album. I was really stoked to find this one, and this has been a fun one to patch up all the holes in my collection, which, I'll be honest, a pretty large hole in my collection considering how long I've been listening to this band. Now, Relayer, honestly, is one that I had never listened to before. This was kind of a point in the band's career where they were getting even more self-indulgent. In fact, the album before this one, Tales of Topographic Oceans, has been kind of called like one of the most self-indulgent albums they've ever done, and kind of was up there with like how self-indulgent a lot of prog rock was getting at that point, which kind of led people to start shitting on it a little bit. And from what I've heard, this one is not as self-indulgent as Tales of Topographic Oceans, but it did lead to some changes in the bands. That album was the first one Alan White took over on drums, and that was also the last one with Rick Wakeman for a while. He left before this album, so they got Patrick Moraz on keys, and this is a pretty awesome album. Albeit, I think it's a little bit more technical and definitely a little bit more self-indulgent. We'll definitely call it that. In fact, this one kicks off with a giant 21-minute opener of the Gates of Delirium, which I know that song definitely has its fans, but I think it's good. It is just kind of all over the place. Like, the tonal shifts are just fucking nuts in there, but towards the end of that song, I think it has some absolutely gorgeous vocal melodies and just melodies in general. Patrick's synth style is a little bit different. He's got more of like a cinematic style, I would call. Like, I feel like he's like scoring like a movie rather than he is a song. But then again, with all the twists and turns that some of these songs take, namely the first one, it kind of works. I also think the vocals have dropped down a little bit. You don't hear John Anderson hitting as many high notes as he did maybe on this one or on Close to the Edge. And I'll be honest, it's kind of missing some of the more rocking songs, like some of the more like, you know, more up-tempo, just sort of rockers, or at least sections in songs where, like, yeah, it's like a good groove, it's a good riff. It's kind of missing a little bit of that. Like, a lot of this album is really just kind of spacing out and being trippy as hell, and it's good. Like, it's technically impressive and all that, but I don't think the songs are as memorable, especially in comparison to this one. But I enjoyed both. They're both awesome. Yes, I think is one of the best prog rock bands ever. Not that bold of a statement, honestly. If you're a prog rock fan, you're like, well, yeah, duh. But out of these two, I would definitely take Fragile just for more listenability and more memorability. But this is definitely a fun, psychedelic, spacey journey in its own right, and pretty fun to listen to. So yeah, if you like prog rock and for whatever reason you haven't jammed at least this one, check out both. They're both really wild. They're both just insane in terms of the songwriting. And if you're a prog metal fan and have never gone into like Yes's back catalog, you're going to hear a lot of stuff that has influenced prog metal over the years. So yeah, check them both out. Both really solid. All right, we got a pair here from Yotuma. We have their debut EP, Age of Acrimony, and their first full-length, Otherworldly Incarnate. This is a Wisconsin-based death metal / groove metal act. They put on a killer show at Denver Deathfest, so I decided to pick up both their albums, or at least both ones they had available. I think this is pretty much it from them. Now, their debut EP, which is kind of weird calling it an EP because it is longer than the full length, but that is how the archives had it, you know, balanced out. I think you can just call them both albums. They're definitely different. One of the big differences is production, because this one sounds a lot better than this one. But one of the big differences between the two here is this one has a really cool intro and outro. And generally I bitch about both of those things, but they bookend something, and they're both musical and both driven by like really cool, clean melodies, because the bulk of this is just groove-laden, chuggy. I would say the riffs are a little bit more thrashy than they are like in the death metal vein, but they're solid. They propel the songs. The vocals definitely are more in a death metal register, like lots of low growls, but a lot of this is just, again, groove-laden as hell. Not a lot of blast beats, but a lot of these are just built on chugging, gnarly riffs. Honestly, with some of these songs, I would say it's almost like a death metal approach to like Lamb of God, especially on Diatengu, sure, whatever that is, and Carphology. Both those songs really have like a, again, like death metal injected Lamb of God sort of feel. The riff work is definitely a little bit more brutal than Lamb of God, like considerably more brutal, I would say, but they're also very catchy. I would say it is kind of derivative at times, like the riffs aren't that intricate, they are very straightforward, and so are the drum patterns and such, even vocal patterns. But overall, it's got a good energy to it, it's punchy, and I thought this was pretty solid. This one, however, I would say is a big improvement. Not only is the production a lot better, but the songs are a little bit more intense and a little bit more diverse. The guitars have such a nasty crunch. There's a little bit more like thickness to them. It still has like a little bit of thrash to them, but that ferocious low end kind of gives it more of a death metal vibe. And the breakdowns are notably heavier. The vocals kind of stay in that same death metal delivery, albeit I think they sound a bit better on here than they do on here. They're a little exposed, and you can kind of hear that they're very layered on here. This one, they kind of sit back in the mix a little bit, and the guitars really just fucking dominate the shit out of this. There's some solid thrashy sections on Viscera Bucket and Shrine of Absolution, and Unhinged Atrocity actually has a pretty much a slam breakdown on it. This one has, I would say, more ideas getting injected into their overall sound, and I think the results in here are really good. I really enjoyed this one. This one's still good, but this one just kind of packs a much more ferocious punch. Oddly enough, I do kind of miss the opening and closing instrumentals that were on here, because I thought those were really cool ways to open and close this album. It kind of bookends it. This one just kind of goes from the throat and then, you know, goes all the way through the album and just kind of, you know, fades out. That's cool. That's awesome. But I think this one had like, you know, kind of a cool way to bookend things. Overall, though, I think this is definitely an improvement, and if this is any indication of the direction they're going in, I am all for it, because this is like death metal meets Earth Crisis, and I like both of those things. So yeah, if you like your death metal groovy with a bit of fucking hardcore and like thrash metal to it, definitely recommend checking these guys out. Pretty solid stuff. Devangelic Xul. This is the fourth album from this Italian brutal death metal act. I guess you could say maybe like technical brutal death metal. I don't know. Italy's brutal death metal scene is just fucking nuts. Like, it is rabid as hell, and they have some of the most intense bands on the planet. And this band even shares members with Anthropophagus, which we went over one of their albums recently. Their frontman actually fronts this band too, and man, I need more by this band. I only own this one and Ursetu, and I fucking love both. This band moves at Mach 10, blast beats, pummeling riffs, but also like intricacies and melodies that are very akin to like Nile. Like, this band, I'm reasonably sure, loves the shit out of Nile, because they move at Nile speed, and while they have a lot of pummeling, heavy, dark, just, you know, gross, brutal songs, there's also that level of intricacy that Nile has that makes these riffs really fucking stand out. This album moves at an absolutely insane pace, but also knows how to, you know, break it down, get a little bit slower, especially on Urgehal Incantation. I don't know what those first words mean. Actually, technically it's one word, it's hyphenated. Whatever. It's a very Morbid Angel, kind of slow, Where the Slime Lives sort of song. A little bit of atmosphere to it. The transitional tracks, the interludes on here are actually really good too. They kind of set up the next song really well. There's some really good acoustic play, and man, the riff work is just fucking furious on here. While they are sinister and brutal, there is like an epicness to them. There's like a sophistication. This feels grandiose and just huge, despite it moving at like Mach 10 and just beating the shit out of you. Vocally, there's a lot of stuff in here that reminds me of Frank Mullen too, which that's always fucking welcome. And this band really knows how to create like a giant sense of atmosphere and scope in terms of their sound while still remaining very raw and primal, especially on Worship of the Black Flames. I love the descending tremolo riff that's on there. It's just an instant, brutal hook. I pretty much loved every track on here. This lightning fast pace of it, and even the transitional tracks here I thought were really good. The last track, which, man, I can't even really say this one. I don't even know how to say this one. I don't know, I kind of feel like if I say it right, my furniture's going to stack up like, you know, Poltergeist, and, you know, all sorts of crazy shit's going to happen. But I also feel like if I say it wrong, I'm going to end up just as fucked as Ash was in Army of Darkness, and something worse will happen. I'm just going to go ahead and say I can't say it because I don't know how. Bellet Uristium Kajam Parsusa? I don't know. It's also really awesome, a great epic way to close off this album, which is just filled with killer riffs. If you're a diehard Nile fan, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't dig this. This is very much in that vein, and again, if you just like, you know, Italian brutal death metal, it's also in that vein as well, like very similar to Hideous Divinity or Vomit the Soul in spots. It's heavier than hell, produced really well. I dig the hell of it. I need more Devangelic in my life. And again, if you are a fan of any of the bands that I have mentioned in comparison, I strongly recommend checking this one out. This is absolutely fucking fantastic. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be listening to this one a lot in the future. Check it out. Master. This is their 1985 demo as well as their 7th Day demo. This is a Metalhead box exclusive I got forever ago in the Metalhead box, and just went over Master not too long ago, so here's some more. And honestly, like some of the stuff I think I have on some of the more expanded editions of like their first 2 albums, but this was a really cool exclusive, and I like the fact that they're doing exclusives in the Metalhead box in terms of CD releases like this. And well, I mean, this stuff is like really raw. Master has a very straightforward, very punky sound, lots of D beats, lots of dirty, nasty riffs that are kind of in the vein of Motorhead a bit, but also definitely fit in with like Death and Obituary. Now the vocals are a little bit different on the 85 demo, kind of more similar to what Speckman was doing in like Deathstrike or in Abomination. Like they have a little bit more of a thrashy tone. And I guess it's important to note that each one of these demos had a different lineup. I mean, Paul's kind of been the main guy in Master, I would say actually almost ever since Master's inception, but you know, that turnover rate was kind of going a little bit early. But the 85 demo is pretty solid. Then the 7th Day demo, notably different. It kind of strips away a lot of the punk and thrashiness and kind of gets way more just death metal sounding. The vocals take a hard shift more towards death metal. They don't have that sort of like hardcore / thrash metal yell. They're more deeper growls. And that demo definitely has a little bit more low end to it. It's kind of cool hearing all these songs in their more raw form, because I mean, I have the albums that all these fucking pop up on. But my thing is, Master's already pretty damn raw to begin with. But this did have a fun bonus track. Well, it has 3 bonus tracks, but the last bonus track from the 7th Day demo, Cut Through the Filth, is easily probably the biggest standout on the entire comp here. It's almost kind of whimsical. I don't know. There's some fun guitar lines that are almost like a little bit like Flogging Molly-ish. There's some synths. There's a tambourine in there for whatever reason. There's even a flute on there, which was also weird. I mean, weirder than the tambourine, that's for sure. I didn't expect that. I don't think I have this song anywhere else, like even in terms of the special editions. I'd have to check again, but I don't remember this song in particular, and it was a really interesting surprise in there. But yeah, overall this was a pretty fun comp. Again, you know, the old school demos, it's kind of cool hearing these older bands in their more raw form, and you know, seeing like the beginnings of certain songs. And yeah, this was pretty fun. I'd say, of course, if you're a Master fan, check this out, because you know, you'd like Master, and this sounds 100% like Master. It might be a little bit difficult to find in terms of like, you know, physical media, because these are Metalhead box exclusives, and I know buying them, you know, in the secondary market on Discogs can be a little, well, expensive, because that's kind of Discogs anyway. But either way, recommend checking it out. This was a pretty fun release. Phrozen, Questioning Society's Secrets. This is the debut album from this Canadian crossover thrash metal act. Another one I got in the Metalhead box. I believe I guessed that they were black metal just because some of the songs kind of seemed like black metal titles, and I was a little bit off, but not entirely, because there's definitely a blackened edge to their sound, especially in the vocals, and occasionally in the riffs too. Your Lullaby and Apartheid both have cold, blackened tremolos, but a lot of this is just go for the throat thrash with nasty riffy breakdowns. This is very much in the vein of bands like Toxic Holocaust and Forced. I would even say Power Trip too, which this definitely has like a Power Trip vibe to it, albeit with like a black metal sort of just tinge to it, like just enough to make you go, that's maybe not necessarily black and thrash, but it's pretty fucking close. Actually, there's a lot of comparisons I could draw to Sadistic Ritual in terms of their blend of black metal, death metal, and thrash metal, though this doesn't have the death metal sound to it. It's the variety in the songs and the pacing of it. All these songs stand out. Like, they have standout moments, like, you know, melodies, leads, breakdowns. It's arranged really well, and I love the energy in here. It doesn't lose energy even when it transitions, and I think that's very important. And I think thrash needs bands like this that are willing to pull in some different influences and kind of use thrash as the central sound and kind of build around it and make things either more evil or more brutal. And yeah, this band nails it. And I really can't think of anything negative to say about it other than, you know, maybe the production's a little gamey, but again, that kind of adds to like a little bit of the black metal sound. I don't know. I know that I dig this, and this is a hell of a debut. And once again, the Metalhead Box sent me some killer stuff from their neck of the woods up in Canada, and yeah, this is fucking awesome. And it's a short listen to it. It's like under a half an hour, so even if you don't like it, it won't take that long to really jam it. But I recommend you jam it because this is just an absolutely riffy beast. So yeah, pretty much if you just like high energy, thrashy, fucking awesomeness, definitely check this out. Blood Ceremony, The Old Ways Remain. This is the 5th album from this Canadian doom metal slash occult rock slash retro rock act. I have a couple of their albums and I really enjoy them, but it's one of those bands I'm not necessarily sure fits under the metal umbrella. Like, they're more of a classic rock sort of vibe, like kind of like The Devil's Blood, but at the same time they're more spooky, occult, sort of doomy sound. It definitely kind of puts them closer to the metal spectrum than, say, other bands like Rival Sons. But I dig this band. I really love their awesome organic sound, that retro 70s, almost kind of like late 60s rock too in there. And while I brought up flutes earlier with Master, which that's still just weird, this band is the band I should be bringing up flutes for, because they're a frontwoman who has amazing haunting vocals that give this a nice spooky dark edge, is also an awesome flute player, and she's doing that shit all over this album. Like, most of these tracks have amazing flute playing. There's even some fiddles that accompany along, and you have some cool harmonies between the flute and the fiddles. And I think it's on Widdershins. I don't know what the hell that is. That's a weird word. Either way, the flute on here gives it like a big, like, Jethro Tull vibe, albeit like a lot spookier. In fact, imagine like classic Scorpions, like the very early run of albums, and then Jethro Tull, and maybe a little bit of Graveyard, and kind of mix all that up, and you'll have something that sounds, I would say, exactly like this. Now, I really dig this, though I think their earlier material was a lot more dark and sinister. Like, you kind of had that more, well, doomy vibe. Here, there's a lot of, like, you know, upbeat rockers, but they're very catchy. Like Lolly Willows, they push the vocals way into the front, and it becomes like kind of a, you know, fun little sing-along. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, though I did expect a little bit more like bleakness and, you know, so that classic doom sound. This kind of replaces a good chunk of that with like a more retro rock sound, but I really can't complain because that is done exceedingly well on here. This album has just flat out amazing rock hooks. Ipsissimus, I think that's how you say that? Yeah, I might have got that right the first time. Imagine that. Absolutely catchy song. Like, just a fucking nice, solid, old school, like, late 70s, early 80s sort of rock hook. I'm all for that, even if it does kind of replace a little bit of the doominess. That's a mild complaint because I think this album's just a real fun listen. So yeah, if you like, again, Graveyard, Rival Sons, Jethro Tull, Black Sabbath, early Scorpions, Blue Oyster Cult maybe a little bit too, Witchcraft, stuff like that. It's not necessarily like metal, but I don't know, it's kind of on the cusp. Either way, it's really fucking good, and you should definitely check it out. Fugitive Maniac. This is the debut EP from this Texas-based thrash metal act. This actually came out last year, though the CD version on 20 Buck Spin didn't come out until this year. I heard rumblings about this one, and believe me, I was excited because this features Blake Ibanez, formerly of Power Trip, or currently in Power Trip. I don't know the status of that band. Believe me, I want them back, but also I really like this. I don't know. If I could have both, I'd be pretty fucking happy. But this also features Lincoln Mullins, the drummer of Creeping Death, and this is almost the spiritual successor to Power Trip. This is very much along those lines. I believe Blake did all the production here. It's guitar driven, it's groovy, it's hardcore and thrash metal coming together with just riffs and fucking violence and mosh pit inspiring D beats. This whole EP is fucking awesome. The vocals are spot on. They have kind of that Riley feel. They're angry. There's enough reverb on them. And man, this is so riff driven, especially the song Hell's Half Acre. There is a section of galloping chugs in there that goes into an off-time breakdown that is just fucking amazing. Like, this is, I guess, in a way, like a spiritual successor to Power Trip, though I wish Power Trip didn't need a spiritual successor, but this really captures that vibe, and I miss it. Since becoming a fan of Power Trip, I look for that sound in other bands, and I mean, I figured it was going to be here just because of who's in it, and I dug this whole thing. I think the last track is maybe a little bit weaker, but it's not that much weaker. In fact, I mean, it's still catchy as hell. I'm just glad to hear Blake putting out music again, and yeah, this has definitely a very familiar feel to it, but it also feels fresh and invigorated and angry, and I really hope they're working on a full length, because I'm on it. Let me know when that comes out, because I want it. I want it like now, but I know it's not out yet. But I can be patient, so I'll wait. Either way, if you have not checked out this EP, definitely check it out if you're a fan of Power Trip, if you're a fan of Enforced, if you're a fan of just anything groovy, riffy, and heavy that has kind of a fucking 90s sound to it. Check it out. It's fucking awesome, and I'm really hoping there's a full length coming soon, because I really want to hear it after hearing this EP. Check it out. Blind Illusion, Wrath of the Gods. This is the third album from this Bay Area progressive thrash metal act. First one in 12 years, though this band has an interesting history in terms of like long periods of hiatuses and just existence. This band has been around since 1978, which would make them one of the oldest bands in the whole Bay Area scene. And to a degree, they're kind of known as that thrash band that Les Claypool from Primus was in before Primus even started. I own their debut album, The Sane Asylum. It's a Metal Mind reissue, and I dig it. Les Claypool's bass work on it is absolutely amazing, and kind of does and doesn't fit, but this band kind of does and doesn't fit in the whole Bay Area, you know, thrash scene, because they're just kind of odd. Now, this album actually features some new members from actually some storied bands as well. This features Andy Gallion, former drummer of Death Angel, and Doug Piercy, former guitarist of Heathen. And, well, I mean, kind of together, it does kind of sound like a blend of those two, plus kind of the weird stuff that Blind Illusion does. Like, it's very thrashy, very riff driven. It's got pretty solid production. The guitars in here sound very thick, very rich. It gets off to a nice heavy start with Straight as the Crowbar Flies. The riffs are nice and chuggy. There's a good galloping rhythm. And then the vocals come in. And vocals with this band have always been kind of an issue with me. I'm just not a huge fan of them. It kind of sounds like Megadeth and Overkill, like somewhere in between Dave Mustaine and Bobby Blitz, and maybe just not as good. Like, he doesn't have much of a range, and his vocal cadences are very odd. And in terms of like the songs, they are a little bit on the long side, though I wouldn't necessarily call them very progressive. Like, they're just long. Like, they have like long drawn out sections of riffs. They have long lead sections, which the leads in here are really solid, but they don't get like very lavish or technical, but they do get a little off kilter and, you know, kind of go off the rails a little bit. Like, Spaced is kind of a funk metal track. Like, it sounds a little bit like Faith No More or Living Color, but with like a little bit more of a thrashy backbone, and honestly vocally more suited for either Corey Glover or Mike Patton, because again, the vocals really don't do much to carry the song in terms of making it like, you know, a little bit more hooky. Amazing Maniacal Monolith has some very Alice in Chains type bluesy, dreary, almost doomy melodies, albeit not quite in the vocal department. Again, that's gonna be a bit of a theme. And Lucifer's Awakening has some really cool, fun, heavy metal gallops and some interesting samples of what sounds like Werner Herzog. So, I don't know, like, there's a lot of, like, colliding ideas and just strangeness to this album, but that is sort of expected with this band. But one of the main drawbacks in here are the vocals, of course, but also the lyrics. The lyrics are kind of just goofy and weird. And I gotta be honest, a lot of the choruses are kind of bad. Like Behemoth, Amazing Maniacal Monolith, the last track, No Rest for Budapest. Like, if you like the title of the song, guess what? You're gonna hear it a lot, especially on No Rest for Budapest, though I do think the neoclassical section at the end is pretty cool. The whole thing, I was thinking, man, this would probably work better as instrumentals because it kind of has like a little bit of that sort of like creativity in terms of like songwriting, like Liquid Tension Experiment, albeit like not as technical, but it's kind of like weird like that. Like it kind of shifts around, but there is a core sound to it. But the vocals just flat out kind of put me off, and the lyrics put me off even more. When I think like progressive, I think smart, and the music itself is smart, but like when it comes down to everything else, it feels a little dumb, maybe a little cheesy, maybe dumb is mean, but dumb might also be kind of accurate once you check out the lyrics. I don't know. It's okay. Like, again, as an instrumental, I would probably really dig this a lot more, but when it came down to, you know, the vocals and the lyrics, like, it really kind of took me out of it. But still, I urge you to check it out, form your own opinions. This could be your favorite thing. You won't know until you check it out. But for me, I mean, I don't know if I had that much in the way of expectations of this, but it was kind of a miss. But again, check it out. You might really dig it. Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, Rejecting Oblivion. This is the fourth album from this New Zealand-based tech death / avant-garde death metal. I don't know. I guess that's right. I don't know. This is one of those bands that has like just a very strange sound. They started off as a deathcore act, a little bit more humorous, I guess. Their first full length was called My Vaseline Diaries, which I can only imagine what they're talking about. I'm pretty sure I know what they're talking about there. But that tone definitely has shifted over the years to more like cathartic, twisted, dark subject matter. And I heard a lot of hype about this album, and I think the hype is pretty fucking warranted because this was really good. This album is chaotic, dissonant, but also melodic, and again, like a lot of cathartic sort of just twisted emotions on here. The vocals in here I think are really cool. There's a lot of vocal diversity. You get like more hardcore shouts, occasionally like sort of groaned cleans, deep growls, screams, and the production here is very, you know, atmospheric, lots of reverb on the guitars, there's lots of distant riffs, lots of weird, crawling, spastic riffing, like very similar to bands like Into the Moats and Cryptopsy. Especially on the song Funeral Smiles. It's not even 2 minutes long and it sounds like a fucking Cryptopsy shit fit, and I fucking loved it. There's a little bit of a hardcore tinge to it, but man, when this gets flat out brutal, like it has just death metal fucking brutality all over it. But the thing that I really like about this is the contrast between like the more lush melodies to the absolutely bruising, apocalyptically heavy stuff on here. Songs like Cicada are very lush, melodic, like you have a lot of atmospheric tremolos, it's very dreamlike, and then it just comes crashing down with these massive heavy breakdowns, which is definitely showcased on the pummeling title track on here. There's a good chunk of this that reminds me of like a much more angry, vicious Rivers of Nile. Like, you know, Rivers of Nile is a lot of introspective stuff, and I'm sure that there's a lot of introspective stuff in the lyrics in here, but man, the viciousness comes out. The drums are fucking furious sounding. There's lots of blast beats, especially on the earth-shattering breakdowns on Wraith and Caustic Burns. Man, this album can get fucking heavy, and it's kind of sounds like disjointed and strange at times, but it really does come together really well. And I like technical death metal, but I'm generally very picky about it. But this one kind of blends that techiness with, you know, more atmosphere, more emotion, and just, again, flat out bone-crunching heaviness. This is quite an awesome album. I'm always wary of the hype machine because sometimes the hype machine delivers some outright turds in my opinion, but that's just me. But yeah, I can see the hype around this band. This is fucking fantastic. And admittedly, I'm kind of curious about their earlier stuff, though I don't know how much earlier because, again, that first album sounds a little stupid, but I don't know, it could be a fun stupid, who knows. But I really like what they're doing now. This is a fucking awesome release. If you were a big fan of, again, like Rivers of Nile, Cryptopsy, I would even say Hate Eternal to a degree too. Check this out. Fucking monstrously heavy, but man, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and I think like most of it is really fucking good. Sulaco. This is the debut EP from this Rochester, New York-based death grind act. I had seen this out years ago, actually back in 2003 when this dropped, and I just did not pick it up for whatever reason, maybe because the cover just kind of made it look like it was, you know, a new metal band, and by that point I was really fucking done with that stuff. But I saw this in E's Bin, I decided to check it out because I realized they were a death grind act, and I really like that stuff. And unfortunately it kind of ties in with the fairly recent news of their longtime bassist Lon Hackett passing away this year. You know, I figured it was time to actually check them out, plus I was always kind of curious if the name was a reference to the ship in Aliens, because, I mean, that's kind of got to be it. I can't think of anything else called Sulaco. And maybe there's like a town someplace, I don't know, called Sulaco. I don't know. I'm just going to go with the ship because Aliens is awesome. But yeah, this is kind of spazzy, kind of noisy death grind. There's like some elements of like stuff like botch on here, but definitely at the core of it, death grind, blast beats all the time, like weird angular sludgy riffs. Honestly, there was a point in here where it was like, man, this kind of sounds like Mastodon's Remission sped the fuck up, and just with blast beats almost in the entire thing. Maybe not so much the drum work in terms of Mastodon, it's more along the lines of Converge, like you get a lot of like pockets of blast beats and then into D beats and like weird groovy breakdowns and just frantic fills. I mean, that does kind of sound like Bron Daler a little bit, but it also sounds like Ben Culler, so I mean, I'm still saying like this is comparable to two really fucking good drummers. Yeah, but this is only 4 tracks, maybe 14 minutes, and honestly it's good front to back. I really like the breakdown that's on Follow the Cloud, like it's a little bit more sludge metal-ish. And the last track, Motion in the Grid, has these really twisted descending scales that make up a very dark and twisted melody to go with a fucking twisted ass song. Yeah, I dug it, and I definitely need to get more Sulaco in the future. And, you know, I don't know if the band's going to continue on without their longtime bassist. You know, I guess we'll see in the future, but I definitely want more, and I know they have more that I just have overlooked for years. So yeah, this is awesome if you like stuff like, again, like Converge, maybe Discordance Axis too, and maybe like Early Burst, I would say is kind of comparable too. Definitely check this out. It's a fucking good EP. Thy Listless Heart, Pilgrims on the Path of No Return. This is the debut album from this one-man UK atmospheric doom metal project. The one man that is involved, Simon Bibby, the keyboardist of My Silent Wake, which admittedly I'm not familiar with that band, is the guy that is doing pretty much everything on here, with Greg Chandler of Esoteric doing the production and mixing and mastering, I believe, as well as some guest spots in here. This isn't like entirely all him, it's just mostly him. I know the drums were done by a session drummer, I think it was Ben Griffiths maybe? I can't fucking remember. And there are guest spots in terms of additional vocals on here, but man, this is really, really good. Definitely something I did not have on my radar at all, and this was kind of a blind buy. I mean, admittedly, I was kind of drawn in by the hype sticker. I mean, the whole, you know, describing of the project was like, all right, that sounds interesting, and holy shit, is this beautiful. Like, this is really pretty for as fucking sad as it is. Like, this is just doomy and gloomy, but is so lush and atmospheric. I think the fact that this guy being a keyboardist, he knows how to layer a lot of sounds, and my God, this has such a massive sound with the dreary guitars and reverby drums and all the synth layers. There are strings that pop up on here. It's an amazing album. Chandler's production on here is fantastic. It has such a huge open sound, like it was recorded inside of the world's biggest auditorium. And the vocals on here are amazing. You have great range between shouted bellows, tuneful crooning, beautiful wailing vocals, some great huge growls, which might be Greg Chandler. And the songs have incredible melodic hooks. There's a lot of stuff that is very much on par with, like, you know, later Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride. I would even say Chemist to a degree. There's even some parts on here that are kind of love letters to Typo Negative. Now, a lot of this isn't like super heavy, but there are some heavier moments, especially on Confessions, The Search for Meaning, and The Precipice. But a lot of this I was really drawn in by the sweeping dynamics, the lovely production, and the vocals, honestly. The vocals kind of feel like they're telling a story with every song, and it's more or less like a lamentation of grief and sorrow and longing, but it is executed so well you're really kind of drawn in by it. When the spirit departs the body has an almost huge cinematic quality to it. I love how it kind of sounds like the score to a very depressing movie. And the song, God, how do you even say this word? Aefnian? 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 I don't know. Anyway, it kind of sounds like extra doomy Pink Floyd there for a while. Well, I definitely have to be in the mood for this because this is just beautiful bummer music. This is really fucking good. And honestly, I probably need to check out My Silent Wake now, because if it's anywhere as good as this, I'm probably gonna really like it. I'll be completely honest, like if I had listened to this last year when it came out, might have been a chance it could have worked its way onto my year-end list. I think it is that good. Yeah, I really don't have any complaints. I mean, if you hate reverb on everything, maybe you won't like this. I don't know, but I think if you're a fan of just beautiful, dreary doom metal with a fuck ton of melody, just check this out. I think this is an absolutely marvelous release. Again, if you're a fan of, like, you know, later Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, Chemist, even a little bit of Typo again, all those bands, check this out. This is quite the fucking listen. Parallax Occlusion Vapor Chambers is a reason why I was wearing the shirt. This I had ordered pretty much the second it was announced, and with good reason. I absolutely love their first two demos, Ray Traces of Death and Exponential Decay. I think they are absolutely amazing death metal demos with a really cool, unique theme about graphic design. It's really wild what this band did. Now, sadly, this band announced that they were breaking up this year, which sucks for multiple reasons. One being, I absolutely love their two demos, as well as the track they put on the Absolute Conversion split, which was fucking awesome too. But one of the main reasons is that when we went over their last demo, Ray Traces of Death, they were kind enough to actually send us stickers and shirts and thanked us, and that was really fucking awesome of them. They didn't have to do that, they just did that out of the kindness of their heart, and I will be forever grateful for that. I thought about wearing my old Parallax Occlusion shirt, but I wanted to get the one that I got with this, because this is possibly the last thing that they will ever release, and this is a compilation of pretty much everything they've done. Now, this includes the Exponential Decay demo, as well as the Ray Traces demo, as well as the song they put out for the Absolute Convergence split, Serrated Tessellation, which was a just beast of a song and kind of showcased a little bit of a transition of sound. It was a little bit faster, more aggressive, and the song was notably a bit longer than, you know, the stuff that was on the demos, and I absolutely loved it. But there's also 3 new tracks in here, which was kind of my main draw for this, because they are very interesting tracks. One of them in particular is quite interesting because it's a System of a Down cover. They cover the song X off of Toxicity and make it, well, very recognizable if you've listened to Toxicity as many times as I have, because I do fucking love that album. But they flat out turn it into a ripping death metal track, kind of murk up the guitars, it's all growled vocals. I mean, they picked a song with like blast beats and probably the heaviest riffs on that album. Like, it's definitely one of the heavier tracks on Toxicity, but they really make it their own. But the 2 songs that are on here that were originals and had not been released before, Procedural Prescriptions and Dithering Anisotropic, maybe that's how you say that word. I have probably never seen that word before, but yeah, it's kind of a thing with this band. Like, there's definitely some words I'm not familiar with because I know nothing about graphic design. Anyway, these 2 songs are absolutely fantastic and pretty different. Dithering Anisotropic, whatever it is. That is probably the longest song they've ever written. It's over 10 minutes long, features some huge Death Doom sections, and definitely has a little bit more atmospheric edge to parts of the songs. In fact, I think there's like synths or possibly strings in it. Very lavish, and probably something they were working on for the full length, or at least an EP that they were planning on following up Ray Traces with. Amazing song, and Procedural Prescriptions is definitely kind of what you're familiar with in terms of their sound. Very riffy, very similar to Tomb Mold, honestly. Like, they just have those kind of dirty sounding riffs with weird melodies to them and really awesome crawling harmonies. I fucking love this band, and this is kind of a bittersweet review because I wanted this band to continue, but they put up a post saying that they just weren't feeling it, and honestly, I respect that. I respect that a lot because I don't like hearing bands that just keep going when you can clearly tell that they're just not into what they're creating. In terms of reasons to quit, I can totally understand that one. Like, I would rather see a band go out on top than, you know, continuing on and not really feeling what they're creating. Like, even if I don't like an album, sometimes you can still sense that a band is still all in on a sound and they still love creating the music. And I think as long as that feeling is present and they're not just going through the motions, you know, it's opinion based anyway, but I can see continuing and just, you know, keeping making music. You know, music is generally a passion project, and if there's no passion, well, the project doesn't necessarily come out that well, at least in my opinion. But yeah, if this is the final offering from this band, I don't know if they have any other projects going. I think they left off on a pretty good note. I mean, it still sucks, again, still kind of bittersweet because I wanted more from this band because I think they just tapped into something awesome in death metal. But I still enjoyed the shit out of it, and I am still super thankful for them sending us shirts and stickers, and they were just super cool with us. So that'll always be like a really cool memory when it comes down to this band, but, you know, I'm glad I just got the tunes. And yeah, this compilation's fantastic. If you want everything that this band has ever released, this is it. Go get it. It's on their Bandcamp. That's where I ordered it. And if you're a collector hound like me, go get the individual demos and the Absolute Convergence split, which is fantastic as well. But yeah, this was awesome. And once again, thank you, Parallax Exclusion, for being so awesome with this. And it's one hell of a last hurrah. Much appreciated. Check it out. Men at Work, Business as Usual. This is the debut album from this Australian like new wave rock band, 80s rock band. In terms of like Australian music, it might be between AC/DC and this band that really introduced me to like just the Australian rock scene. Maybe Midnight Oil, but I don't listen to Midnight Oil that much. Anyway, I saw this and I was just reminded about how much I love the song Down Under and Who Can It Be Now. And I was like, you know, I've never actually checked out the rest of their stuff, and I've heard a lot of good things about just their music in general, and I just picked it up, and yeah, I just feel like I kind of needed this one. This is another big 80s MTV memory. Just me sitting in front of the TV in my fucking underoos watching music videos nonstop, and this band came up. I believe it was the Down Under video. And I fucking love that song. That flute line is catchier than hell, and for Who Can It Be Now, I mean, that sax line, I think maybe Careless Whisper might be one of the few that are a little bit more famous. I mean, Huey Lewis and the News had some pretty famous sax lines in there. But yeah, the music itself is fun, quirky. It's very upbeat. Kind of similar to like bands that employed a lot of reggae tropes in terms of their music, like, you know, The Police, but also kind of similar to like Dire Straits, especially in their later career. The songs are built around like clever pop hooks and inventive writing. I like the interplay between like the guitars and the sax lines. Occasionally you have some synths in there too. There's some good rockers on here, like Underground, which is catchier than hell. Be Good Johnny, I like how you rearranged that one there. Also like a good upbeat kind of more rock oriented song, like it kind of strips away a little bit of that sort of like reggae bounce. But honestly, when it kind of gets to the back half of this, the slowed down songs I think are just a lot more catchy and just, I don't know, like more I don't know, engaging, like Touching the Untouchables, Down by the Sea, Catch a Star, like those last 3 songs I think are some of the best ones on the album. And since this is a reissue, remaster from 2003, this includes some really cool live tracks, Underground, Who Can It Be Now, and a song called F19, which was a non-LP B-side that's really fucking good. But yeah, I ended up loving this entire album. This is completely not metal at all, no fucking duh, but I don't know, I just like 80s rock hooks and power pop, stuff like that, and this band had a kind of unique, quirky style, very short-lived. I think they only put out 5 albums, and then they kind of ended up going their separate ways. I know Colin Hay ended up doing a lot of scores and such. Like, I guess he did a lot of stuff for Scrubs, which, you know, this whole listing thing got me curious about what the members were doing, and Colin Hay ended up being like an actor and, again, scoring movies and doing a lot of like solo albums. A pretty interesting fellow. But yeah, this whole listing was a lot of fun, a lot of nostalgia involved, but honestly, it's just great fucking music. Like, it's just well-written fucking 80s, whatever the fuck it is. It's just, that's what it is. It's 80s stuff, and it's fucking fun. So yeah, if you like the Police, the Cars, I don't know, 80s rock, you know, just, I don't know, just check them out. They're just fucking fun. I mean, they're pretty well known, and honestly, the 2 main singles are enough to lure most people in, but honestly, the rest of the album, fucking killer too. So yeah, check it out. And finally, we have Phlebotomized. Immense, Intense Suspense. This is the first LP from this Dutch death metal act, progressive death metal, maybe death doom. It's a really interesting blend, and honestly, this is a band I've been meaning to check out for a while. I know they put out an album this year, and I kind of missed it because there's a ton of other shit that was coming out. But I saw Hammerheart was reissuing these, and, well, honestly, there's going to be more that's going to pop up later in collection updates because, well, I ended up really liking this, and I saw they had more, so I just picked them up. This band is really wild in terms of their blend of styles. Like, the progressive elements definitely come through in the songwriting because this can switch gears abruptly. There is clean singing, there are harsh growls, there are gang vocals, like hardcore gang vocals. You also have a predominant violin player on here. There are synths, and the riffs can transition from just massively doomy slow riffs to just full tilt death metal. This band has no shortage of talent. In fact, they might have an overabundance because at certain points in this, it feels like every band member, like all 6, 7 of them, hold on, seven of them on here. Honestly, at points, it feels like every member wanted to throw in something that was their own idea. And I think that's probably a good reason why this jumps around a lot. But there is definitely like a uniform heaviness to it, though I think like, again, those heavy sections kind of change around. Like, you have some more melodic death metal riffs that pop up too, but you have some straight up like old school death metal, like kind of like Death, or maybe in their case, like Pestilence. But you also have like My Dying Bride played at various speeds, like it's not always super slow. Honestly, a better comparison might be Nocturnus because this is very technical as well. But yeah, the album is kind of like all over the place in a fun way. Like, for example, mellow are the reverberations. There's a spot there where everything drops out and you get a 2, 3, 4 go, and then it goes into like kind of a thrashy, riffy section. There's a spot on Desecration of Alleged Christian History that, well, it kind of sounds like the keyboard intro to the Phantasm Breakdown and Left Hand Path. Like, it's really fucking close. And this can get like super brutal in spots too. But the songs are very long, so you have a lot of room for transitions and, you know, kind of moving around and shifting the modes. And honestly, the vocals do a really good job sort of navigating that territory. I think there are multiple clean vocalists on here. At least that's the thing I got with the last track, Gone. There seems to be like some layered vocals there, and that's more of a like sort of a dirge or ballad. Like, honestly, yeah, it kind of reminded me of Alice in Chains a little bit, and then it kind of builds into this big crescendo and then closes with about a minute of silence, which I didn't quite get there. I mean, it might have been like a minute of silence for someone that passed. I don't know, but I thought it was just sort of an odd way to end the album. But overall, this was really good, and this was definitely why I got more coming. So yeah, there's going to be more Phlebotomized and other collection updates. I really like this band. It's very diverse. It's kind of all over the place, maybe like a little too much at times, but it's a really fun listen, and again, so much fucking talent in this band. Almost to the point where I think it's just kind of hard to control, but I think the results were pretty damn good in here, and I'm really eager to get into the other ones I snagged. Yeah, if you like, shit, Nocturnus, My Dying Bride, Death, Pestilence, fuck, I don't know, man. There's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe a little bit of Atheist, too. Check this band out. I'm definitely just kind of dipping my toe in their discography so far because there's still a lot to check out, but I really dug this one, and I'm looking forward to checking out the other ones. So yeah, check them out. All right, and that knocks out another collection update, and that kind of knocks out the whole Denver thing. I can get on to stuff that I have got since I got back. I mean, granted, there was some stuff that I picked up when I got back because, yeah, you know, I go to record stores a lot. But there's a lot of stuff that I've ordered that has come in, and just believe me, there's a ton of stuff for me to talk about. But I'm actually going to take a little bit of a break from collection updates and work on some states of metal. I don't know what states I'm going to go after, but I might do a couple of smaller ones just to sort of get back in the swing of things, and then move on to some bigger ones later. But yeah, I'm definitely going to stay busy. I just, you know, want to take a break from these long videos. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsofmetal.com. While the site is under construction, there's still a link to our Patreon and our channel. And when we get our shirts, which, you know, we ordered, they should be arriving hopefully soon, we are going to do a nice little video showing them off and doing a giveaway. But yeah, once we get them, the site will open back up and we can do like some pre-orders and stuff. I don't know how long we're going to wait for the giveaway. That'll probably be decided when they get here. Either way, we got a lot of stuff planned and we're perpetually busy here, but thank you guys so much for all the support. We couldn't do this shit without you. You guys fucking mean the world. I know the thank you part where it gets weird at the end of every video because I just end up saying the same stuff. I know, but I mean it. You guys are awesome, and you're one of the main reasons we do this. You know, the fucking community that we've built around this channel is absolutely awesome, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the fucking world. So once again, thank you all, and we will catch you later.